BTS is back, feel the attack.
Welcome BTS Lovers Update. Purple Heart. Korean media is once again in an uproar as the new year begins. What first appeared as a quiet rumor has now turned into a major headline across entertainment news. A New Year letter from BTS is said to hold emotions far deeper than anyone expected. But what is actually written in that letter? Why are so many media outlets calling it one of the most emotional messages BTS has ever shared? And the question that keeps everyone wondering, is it true that Jimin broke down in tears while mentioning ARMY, his voice trembling as his emotions overflowed? What did he feel at that exact moment that made the atmosphere fall completely silent? Is this letter simply a New Year greeting, or does it contain a hidden message BTS has been wanting to deliver all along? And if ARMY is truly the reason they keep moving forward, why does the phrase, "ARMY never left," sound so painful yet so comforting at the same time? Now the public can't stop asking, is all of this really true, or just the media's interpretation? Stay with us on BTS Lovers Update, because in this episode, we'll slowly uncover every detail behind the letter that has Korean media and fans talking nonstop. Purple Heart. Media Korea in shock. The New Year letter that changed everything. As the new year quietly unfolded, no one expected that a single handwritten letter would become the emotional center of Korea's entertainment world. There were no dramatic announcements, no sudden press conferences, and no grand stages. Yet, within hours, headlines began to appear, careful at first, almost hesitant, before spreading like wildfire across major media outlets. BTS New Year letter leaves fans in tears. Jimin's emotional confession stuns the public. A message not just written, but felt. At first glance, it seemed like just another New Year greeting. After all, BTS has always been known for their heartfelt words and deep connection with fans. But journalists quickly realized something was different this time. The tone was quieter, the language was more vulnerable, and the emotion, especially from Jimin, was raw in a way rarely seen before. Industry insiders described the atmosphere surrounding the letter as heavy with sincerity. It wasn't celebratory in the usual sense. It didn't shout hope loudly. Instead, it whispered something far more powerful, gratitude mixed with pain, strength mixed with longing. And at the center of it all was one line that no one could ignore. ARMY never left. The letter that was never meant to be loud. According to Korean media reports, the letter was written with the intention of being personal, almost intimate. It wasn't designed to dominate headlines or trend across platforms. In fact, that might be exactly why it did. Reporters noted that the structure of the letter felt less like a public message and more like a private diary entry. One written in the early hours of the morning, when thoughts are honest and defenses are gone. Each sentence carried weight, as if it had been rewritten countless times before finally being allowed to exist. What struck journalists most was the absence of dramatic language. There were no exaggerated promises or flashy declarations about the future. Instead, the letter focused on presence, on staying, enduring, and continuing together even when things felt uncertain. Media critics described it as a letter that doesn't ask for attention, yet commands it. And then came Jimin's part. Jimin's voice, bare and unprotected. When Jimin's words were read aloud, something shifted. Multiple media outlets reported that his section of the letter stood out not because it was longer, but because it felt exposed. There was a softness in his expression that suggested he wasn't performing. He was remembering. Witnesses described his voice as steady at first, carefully controlled. But as he approached the line about ARMY, the control began to slip. His pace slowed, his breathing changed, and then silence. For a brief moment, Jimin stopped speaking. Korean reporters noted that it wasn't the kind of pause that comes from forgetting lines. It was the kind that happens when emotions arrive faster than words can handle. When he finally continued, his voice trembled. ARMY never left. That was when his eyes filled with tears. A moment that couldn't be edited out. In an industry where every second is polished and perfected, this moment stood out precisely because it wasn't. There was no background music to soften the impact. No camera cut to protect him. No attempt to hide what was happening. Jimin did not wipe his tears immediately. Media analysts later pointed out how rare this was. In Korean entertainment culture, idols are often trained to maintain composure at all times. Emotion is allowed, but only in measured doses. What Jimin showed was not measured. It was honest. He inhaled sharply, attempting to regain control, but his expression had already said everything. The corners of his lips trembled, as if he wanted to smile through the emotion, but couldn't quite manage it. That single moment, captured and replayed across news platforms, became the emotional core of the entire story. Why Army Never Left hurt so much. Almost immediately, fans and media alike began analyzing why that simple sentence felt so powerful. Entertainment psychologists interviewed by Korean news outlets suggested that the phrase carried layers of meaning. On the surface, it was gratitude, but underneath, it hinted at fear, the fear of being forgotten, of being abandoned during silence, hiatus, or distance. For years, BTS has spoken openly about pressure, expectations, and the weight of global attention. But this was different. This wasn't about success or charts. It was about connection during absence. Never left implies there was a moment when leaving was possible. And that implication broke something open. Fans began sharing clips of the moment online, accompanied by messages like, "He wasn't thanking us for staying. He was relieved we did." That wasn't a line. That was a confession. He sounded like someone who had been holding that in for a long time. Korean media reacts. This is not just fan service. Within 24 hours, major Korean media outlets released opinion pieces emphasizing that this moment should not be dismissed as typical idol-fan interaction. One columnist wrote, "This was not fan service. This was an artist revealing vulnerability at a time when silence has been louder than music." Another media analyst noted that Jimin's emotional response reflected a broader shift in how idols communicate, moving away from perfection and toward authenticity. Several outlets even compare the letter to earlier BTS moments, noting how their messaging has matured alongside their audience. The tone was no longer about dreams alone, but about survival, patience, and shared endurance. ARMY's response, quiet but overwhelming. Interestingly, ARMY's reaction was not explosive. There were no loud fan wars, no aggressive trending campaigns. Instead, timelines filled with quiet messages. "I'm still here. We never went anywhere. Take your time. We'll wait." Korean media described the response as soft but powerful, noting that the emotional resonance of the letter created a sense of collective stillness rather than chaos. Fans weren't demanding more content. They weren't asking for explanations. They were simply staying. A new year that began with honesty. As the story continued to unfold, one thing became clear. This letter had changed the emotional tone of the year, not just for BTS, but for the relationship between artists and fans. It wasn't about promises of comebacks or future projects. It was about acknowledging the present, exactly as it is, uncertain, quiet, and emotionally complex. And perhaps that is why this moment lingered. Because in a world that constantly demands reassurance, BTS, and Jimin in particular, offered something different. When emotions could no longer be hidden. After that moment passed, the atmosphere did not immediately return to normal. Korean media noted a heavy emotional pause, as if everyone watching, whether in person or through a screen, needed time to process what had just happened. This was not merely a moment of tears. It was a moment when the distance between idol and fan completely disappeared. Jimin lowered his head briefly, took a deep breath, and then tried to smile. It wasn't a staged smile. It was the smile of someone trying to reassure himself that everything would be okay. And that was precisely where its strength lay. Several entertainment journalists wrote that Jimin's expression revealed an inner conflict rarely seen. The tension between his responsibility as a global artist and his personal feelings as a human being searching for certainty. Body language that could not lie. Communication psychologists interviewed by Korean media highlighted Jimin's body language during that moment. His shoulders stiffened slightly, his hands clasped together, and his gaze became unfocused, classic signs of someone holding back emotions to avoid completely breaking down. According to their analysis, this was not a sudden, meaningless cry. It was emotion that had been suppressed for a long time, finally finding a small opening to escape. When someone cries not out of pure sadness, but out of relief, the tears feel different, one columnist wrote. And perhaps that was exactly what Jimin felt as he spoke those words. relief that he was not alone, relief that his belief in ARMY had been proven true. The other BTS members' reactions. Silence filled with meaning. Interestingly, the reactions of the other BTS members also became a major point of attention. They did not speak immediately. No one tried to lighten the mood with jokes. No one interrupted the moment. RM was seen nodding slowly, his eyes fixed on one point, as if fully understanding what Jimin was feeling. Suga lowered his head, calm yet serious. Jungkook briefly bit his lip before taking a deep breath. V turned his face away for a moment, while Jeon gave Jimin a gentle, supportive look. Korean media described this as wordless solidarity. They didn't need to speak because they knew the emotion did not belong to Jimin alone. It belonged to all of them. A short sentence, a long-lasting wound. The phrase, "Army never left," soon became the center of discussion in forums and opinion columns. Many asked the same question. Why would BTS, a group with millions of loyal fans worldwide, still carry a fear of being abandoned? Entertainment industry analysts explain that global popularity often creates a deeper sense of loneliness. When everything looks big and loud on the surface, the silence behind the scenes can feel even heavier. BTS has gone through periods when activities slowed down, physical distance increased, and communication with fans could not happen as freely as before. In moments like those, uncertainty easily takes root. And that sentence, short and simple, sounded like an honest confession from a heart that once wondered, "Are they still waiting for us?" ARMY's reply, quiet yet powerful. ARMY's response in Korea and around the world did not come in the form of loud cheers. There was no overwhelming hype. Instead, what emerged was a calm warmth. Social media filled with simple posts. Old photos of BTS captioned, "We're still here." Short messages saying, "Never left." Silent videos with nothing but the words, "We're waiting like always." Several Korean outlets described this as one of the most mature responses ever shown by a fandom as large as ARMY. No demands, no pressure, just presence. And that presence was what mattered most from the beginning. A shift in how BTS speaks to the world. The New Year letter was also seen as a turning point in how BTS communicates. In the past, their messages often centered on dreams, ambition, and a bright future. Now, their language feels more grounded, more about the process, more about endurance, more about staying together in silence. One culture editor wrote, "BTS no longer speaks as untouchable icons. They speak as humans growing alongside their fans." And Jimin, with his tears and trembling voice, became the clearest embodiment of that change. A new year, old wounds, and new hope. The beginning of a new year is often associated with resolutions and fresh enthusiasm. But for BTS, this new year felt more reflective. The letter did not cover old wounds with sweet words. Instead, it acknowledged them and stood with them. Korean media concluded that the strength of this letter lay in its courage to admit that things are not always okay. And perhaps that is why so many people felt connected to it. Because in a world that constantly demands strength, BTS, through Jimin, dared to show that vulnerability is human. Did this really happen? That question continues to echo. Did all of this really happen? And according to Korean media, the answer does not lie in formal proof or official clarification. The truth of this moment is felt through its reaction. Because it wasn't exaggerated. Because it wasn't forced. If this were a script, it was too quiet to be called drama. And if this were acting, it was too honest to be called a performance. A message that lingers in the heart. As the headlines slowly faded, one thing remained, a warmth that was difficult to put into words. The letter may have been read, the video may have been replayed countless times, but its meaning continues to live on. BTS did not say, "Don't leave." They said, "Thank you for not leaving." And for ARMY, perhaps that was the sentence they needed to hear the most, not as fans, but as companions on the journey.